family, and I'm the CEO and founder of Good Grief, and this is Plotting the Podcast, where we have casual conversations about death to reduce the stigma and hopefully lower the barrier to entry to having these difficult conversations. I'm here today with Andrew Sykes, so thank you for being here.
Awesome.
I had the pleasure of meeting Andrew at Kellogg School of Business, where he was my professor, and he was teaching a course called Entrepreneurial Selling. And I've since learned how lucky I was to be in that room, not only because apparently that class is an award-winning one, but also I never thought I'd meet the most interesting man in the world, but I really think Andrew might be the most interesting man in the world. And he does love flattery, so this is working for him. So, as I said, he's a professor, he's a TED and professional speaker, he's an author, he's a yoga instructor, and he's a transformational leader of businesses and sales teams, and he's an expert on behavioral change. And he's a self-titled reformed actuary who actually started his own behavioral research lab to figure out why people do what they do. And if you weren't intrigued enough by all of this, he also just published a book with all of his own poetry called Woof, but I don't think I did that title justice. So welcome, Andrew, and thank you so much for being here.
Well, if there could be a better introduction than that, I don't know it. I'm thrilled to be here. Plus, I'm excited about this conversation. Who gets to talk about enough? So let's do it.
I love it. I love it. So I don't know if I told you this, but you're my first guest, and I picked you because other than all of your many talents, which we just outlined, but at Good Grief, we started Good Grief and this podcast to try to get people to change the way they talk about death and make plans for their own eventual end. And you just happen to be an expert on behavioral change, and I don't know many of those. And I don't know if I've ever told you this statistic, but 70% of adults do not have a will. And it's not because they don't know they should have one. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I think there are many things going on. One of which is, at least in the West, we have cultivated an unnatural fear of death. And I say unnatural because it's not the way it has to be. But there are massive consequences with assuming that death is the worst thing that can happen to you. One of my bugbears about it is we spend half of our lifetime medical expenses in the last 6 months of life because we're just clinging to days of the quantity of life rather than being obsessed with the quality of life. And I think it's this fear of death, this hope that it won't come, it'll happen to someone else or it'll happen later, the time mindset that has people die in a way that I would describe as irresponsibly dying. Like leaving behind not only the grief at the loss of your life to other people, but leaving them with this enormous burden of having to deal with your funeral and your debts and your admin, which isn't in order, and finding your keys and your password and a million other things. I mean, who needs all of that hassle when you're in the middle of grieving for someone you love?
Good thing you never lock your door, so no one will need to find the keys to that or to your minivan.
Exactly.
No. Well, that was actually a perfect segue. So clearly you thought about this a lot, about how do you think about leaving a legacy and not wait till the last 6 months of life to try to extend it and cling on. So I guess number one, do you have any tips for living life to the fullest? I'm surprising you with this question, but also what are your end of life plans and have you thought about it?
Okay. Two very good and separate questions.
Yes.
My view on living a full life is best explained by this metaphor. Imagine that your life is a table and you're dropped in the center of the table the day you're born. And then you could trace someone's life by seeing how much of that table they explore before they fall off the edge and die. In my view, many humans are born and squiggle their way towards the edge and fall off, living an interesting life, but leaving so much of their possible humanity literally on the table. So for me, a full life is a life where you get to explore all the paths not taken. Who says you can't be a yoga teacher and a poet and a professor and a salesperson and a dad and an adventurer and 50 other things? Now, that may sound unfocused, but Would you rather lead a rich, full life that others describe as unfocused, but it leaves you thrilled by the experiences, constantly learning? And I happen to think the most interesting people are those Renaissance people who can have a conversation about genetics and physics on the one hand, poetry and pottery on the other, Prague and Poland.
One more P, yeah.
Yeah, one more P. So for me, a full life is a life where you continue to explore and develop skills in a range of areas unrelated to what your primary occupation is, and maybe even within that. As for death plans, I would very much like not to be buried or cremated.
Say more. I know you will, but say more.
That my legacy will be remembered as the life I lived, not the death I had. And I'm hoping that my kids and the few people in the world that will miss me would join me in celebrating my life and having an enormous party as my life comes to an end. If I'm of a mind that allows me to plan it, my fantasy ending is strapped in a convertible, packed with TNT in the back, heading over Grand Canyon, blowing up in midair and landing on
I forgot you want to Thelma and Louise it. Yeah.
Yes, Thelma and Louise with some dynamite and maybe some fireworks. Now, I do happen to care about the environment. I don't want to leave a burning wreck in the bottom, but something like that. I mean, if your life is spectacular, and why not have one, wouldn't you want your death to match it? But at the very least, I don't want to die in a hospital. I don't want to live a life of mere survival. I'm a big fan of euthanasia and chosen death rather than the death that comes to get you. I may not have that choice, and so be it. But at the very least, and in the worst case, I want fun music, fun people, a couple of drinks, preferably a Negroni or two, and for people to tell stories of the idiotic things I did, not the things they miss about me. Like, I'm not sure that grief is avoidable, but the depth and breadth of it doesn't need to be as macabre, morose, and horrible as it is in the West.
So how do we make it less macabre?
I think it's a mindset opportunity. And for me, a mindset is you tell yourself about yourself. If the story you tell yourself about death is, it's the end, and it's terrible, and everyone I love is going to be sad, and no one will survive without me. Well, of course, it's something to fear and put off. But I happen to think of death as just the process of the universe exploding. It exploded in a way that generated me. It'll continue to explode as it turns me into the dust and the soil that produces whatever comes from it next. I hope I am reincarnated, not in the spiritual sense, but I'm made of elements, and elements make other things. I hope I come back as an avocado tree.
Oh, why?
A little nutty, kind of nutritious. You know, there are worse things. I could be
a peach. You just want a pit. You want something with a pit.
Something with a pit. You know, a little crunchy, a little fruity, and at least something that people can enjoy.
I love it. I'm also seeing lots of themes of explosions. So where did your obsession with exploding come from?
Well, I am an amateur physicist. I love the science of the Big Bang. And the more I've studied it, the more I've come to the conclusion, like everything in life that's interesting is some form of an explosion or a reaction, whether it's throwing gasoline on a fire, the Big Bang, or just the little microscopic things that happen in our cells. It's why I called my poetry book Woof, because we're all just part of this exploding universe. We just happen to be the part that gets to think about itself and wonder why we're here.
So how much do you think we should be thinking about it?
I think we should think about death regularly. Not because it's depressing, but because I believe that the more present you are to the fact that your time is limited, the more likely you are to make use of what you got. There are a lot of people who keep a skull present. I certainly have many in my house as a reminder, like, your days are numbered. So make today really, really count. And one way to do that is to think about death frequently. I also think that the more you face something, the more you talk about it, the less fearful it is. So why do we hide from it when we can talk openly? And thank you for doing that with this podcast. I hope
thank you.
Listen, and many more people come and join you to take the nasty stigma out of this concept we have of death as the final curtain.
I mean, I think you're starting like a whole movie plot with just driving off a cliff and exploding. So, that doesn't sound like an end. It sounds like the beginning of a whole new story and a news article and a cleanup crew, like you said. So like, obviously that's the dream, but what it would be a backup plan? Like, do you want there to be a fireworks display over, I don't know, a lake, or do you want a big bonfire? Or not to cut down on your dreams, because we're all going to make them happen.
You know, if by some accident of planning, I land up in a coffin, I hope the people, you included, will have the presence of mind to come and dance on the top of that hearse.
Okay.
At the very least, I want people dancing on my dead, cold body or the coffin that it comes in.
I thought you were going to tell me to like grave rob, and I was like, I think that could be illegal, but like, let's talk after this podcast when we're not recording.
Thank you. If I have to be cremated, so be it. But please don't spread my ashes anywhere unless you intend to sprinkle them into a joint and smoke it. But other than that, I hope that no one thinks that I need to have my ashes ceremoniously sprinkled in some meaningful place. I don't need a plot in the ground, a stone memorial plaque on a wall. I think if you really, really loved deeply, those memorials for you are etched in people's hearts, not in stone. I'll take that on.
I'm stealing that quote as the tagline for this podcast. You just made the quote of the day. I love it. I love it. I actually heard a story recently of someone who was getting composted, and they wanted the family at the end gets the like really rich nutrient soil and gets to do whatever they want with it. And the man was like, I want to be made into tequila. So they planted an agave bush with him, and now he is currently tequila. So another option to consider in terms of if you want to be an avocado tree, that could be possible for you.
I have to change my choice of flora. So a bunch of botanicals and make a good old gin out of me, and then have a dirty martini in my memory.
Yeah, I like that. Well, cheers to that. It sounds like you have a good plan in hand, and you have your thinking in order in terms of like, you think about this frequently to appreciate life more. So is there anything else you'd like to add to your funeral plan?
Don't think that you can rely on yourself, because clearly you won't be around to execute on it. So it's one thing to think about it. It's another to have a few good friends who you can count on to execute your will, whether it's written or verbal, after your passing. So I do think that's worth talking about, is how do you get other people involved in planning this grand party that is the last one that you're in attendance at. You'll be the host of, you'll be the guest of honor. You just may not be saying a lot. And
this would be the quietest you've ever been.
It might be. I have people in my life who have been assigned and have taken on certain roles to prepare for or accelerate the party.
Accelerate the party.
And what I mean by that is there are very high likelihoods that most of us will become less than of sound mind on the path to death. Who I am will die not at the moment I stop breathing, but at the moment I stop being able to love and communicate. And that's the day I'd like to die. So if my body insists on existing beyond the date of my consciousness being aware and active, then I have friends who will come and make sure that the two align.
It sounds like you've honestly taken care of everything, which is like clearly so much more than most people have done. So I definitely applaud you for that, for having the uncomfortable conversations, for thinking through that level of detail of knowing that one day you might not be of sane mind, and like what you really want to happen, and like finding those trustworthy people in your life. So.
And it's because living in this country, it doesn't have a legislative environment that makes a lot of that easy. So also thanks to you and your extraordinary services in Good Grief, I've done a lot of the legal and written planning. It's one thing to talk to a friend about strapping me into a car and blowing me up over the Grand Canyon. It's a very other thing to have wills and trusts and documents and all the things you recommend and help us do in Good Grief. So, But for your service, I'm sure I would have the fun conversations wrapped up, but not the hard work of planning the execution of a well-lived life coming to an end with a beautiful bang rather than a nasty fizzle.
Yeah, that is very well said. And I couldn't have said it better myself, but I'm, again, so impressed that you were able to both have the conversation about the fun things, because I'll help make sure that the convertible is red, because even if you don't care about the color, I care. So we'll make sure it's red. We'll make sure the explosion is large. And I'm glad that you've already done the administrative component so that we can celebrate and don't have to worry about all the not so fun details.
Yeah. And I think one of the topics I'd love you to have a different guest on in the future is the legislative environment around euthanasia and why it's so taboo in America and what we might do. Because like women's rights, I believe we should also have the right to choose how and when our life comes to an end.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I definitely should. If you know of anybody watching, send me recommendations of people to talk to, because that is such an important conversation to happen. And the nuances in terms of, I think I'll call them death rights across, like even state to state, vary so much. And so, and there's so much stigma around everything related to this topic. So the more openly we can chat about it, like that's a perfect topic to dive into. So thank you for suggesting that. Well, let's wrap it up with a final question. So we know that you're going to go out with a bang. So what would your final meal be if you had to pick?
Well, it would begin with a Negroni. My favorite.
And end with a Negroni.
But honestly, there have to be three of them, because when people ask me, what's your favorite cocktail? My answer is my third Negroni. So I would start with three of those with a couple of really interesting canapes, maybe some caviar and a blini so I can feel very bougie before I pass on. And then, as disappointing as it may sound, I love a good grilled cheese. And a fantastic meringue cream-covered pecan pie. So I'd like a big slice of that together with a well-grilled 4-cheese meal.
Okay, what are the 4 cheeses?
Gruyere, Emmentaler, a very sharp cheddar, and some deeply stinky blue cheese. All in there, crispy, almost burned top on a pumpernickel or a dark rye bread. Yes, I've thought about it. And when that's done, maybe a glass or a bottle of champagne to wash it all down. And then right at the end, a tiny little wafer that brings about the last moment.
Like a communion wafer, or what kind of wafer?
I mean, given that I was born and raised Catholic but have recovered since, that might be a nice ironic final meal.
Yeah.
You've ever watched Monty Python, The Meaning of Life? There's a scene where a gentleman is given a wafer and he explodes after an enormous meal as a result. So something more along those lines.
So we're going to find you an exploding wafer, and that's how it's going to happen. I love this. So we can't find the convertible in the Grand Canyon. We find an exploding wafer, and poof, that's it. And we start your playlist.
Exactly. Cue the music. I would like, a bagpipes version of Ave Maria, or one of those equally tear-inducing hymns, just to get everyone in the mood, because there's nothing like a good laugh or a good cry.
Okay, so you do want people to cry, but you also want them to ultimately be like joyous and celebratory.
I would love people being in that state when your tears are streaming down your face and you're laughing at the same time, and you're not quite sure whether they're tears of laughter, tears of tears of joy, tears of sadness, because they're a little bit of both. I mean, do I want people to be sad that I've gone? A little, says my ego. But mostly, I want them to be laughing at all the ridiculous things that we did together and sitting around saying, remember the time we did this? And everyone's like, are you kidding? That actually happened? So I am also inspired to die with some secrets.
Okay.
When my dad passed away, I discovered that the most Catholic man I ever knew, my dad was William Charles Philip Sykes.
Mm-hmm.
All of my brothers are named William, or our second name is William. And on his death, we discovered my dad was born Manny Cohen, a little Jewish kid in Cape Town, South Africa. A secret.
That's wild.
Entire family. So I am working on taking some secrets to my death for my children to discover, like Easter eggs in the movie of my life when it comes to an end.
You're like creating a scavenger hunt for them. Like, hey, just so you know, you're not my children, even though you look exactly like me.
For example.
Okay, I can't.
Tastier secrets than that.
But don't make them too juicy, because then they might plot to
That's true.
Find out.
I haven't told them that I'm doing this, so I hope they don't watch this podcast, so it doesn't ruin it.
I doubt they'll find it on LinkedIn. They're too young for that, unless, I don't know, the job market's hard. Who knows when kids are looking these days? You got to start early, right?
Exactly. Plus, I don't entirely trust my son not to plot my death just to discover the secret. He hates being kept out of a secret.
Wait, that's why I'm like, you're making it too intriguing. You're like, oh, I have this pot of gold that you're going to find somewhere. You're like doing this to yourself.
Now, if I think about the design of the secret, it would have to be something that is not monetary. It's not like there's $1 million buried under the avocado tree in the back. It's more like wow, where did that come from? I never knew that about my dad. And it's somewhere between awfully confronting and pretty cool, and I'm not too sure which.
Why do you want that?
Well, I love magic. I love a grand reveal.
Okay.
I happen to enjoy being in and seeing humans in a state of duality. Like sad and giggling at the same time, confronted and pleased at the same time. These in-between states. And maybe that's all life is in the end, an in-between state. I just find them really interesting.
I love that. Well, I don't want to say I'll look forward to finding out what these surprises are, but I will look forward to spending as much time as possible laughing and crying and living the best lives as we go throughout our journey.
Yeah, I know I can count on you to show up and bring the glamour to whichever end of life celebration I'm involved with.
For sure. I was the bartender at my grandma's funeral, so I got you.
Thank you.
In full leopard.
Perfect. Negroni in hand, maybe a whip in the other hand to keep the customers in under control.
Keep everybody in line. Make sure you're laughing. Keep laughing. Keep crying.
Exactly.
I love it. Well, that was all perfect. So where can people follow along and check out your book and all the other things?
My book website is woof.com, but with 8 O's in it. WOOF.com. Why 8? That's a long story, but there are 8 steps in a recipe for reinvention inside of a company I facilitate for called Serenade. Of course, people can find me on LinkedIn, where I look somewhat professional, like good professors should. I run a business called Habits at Work, so they can find me there. But mostly they can find me where good books and good Negronis are sold, served, or stolen.
I love it. Well, again, thank you so much for being with us. And for everybody listening, I will share the template we use for funeral planning. And thank you, Andrew, again for being here. It was so lovely. And I will start working on finding explosive crackers.
That's awesome. I'm honored to be your first guest. I'm sure you will have many more that are interesting. And if you are listening, get that template from Emily. It'll change your life, but more importantly, it'll be the greatest gift you give to the people you leave behind.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.